Good morning, sophomores. I remembered to get my glasses today so I can actually read a little more carefully and not have a headache when I'm done like I did yesterday. So, so today we start a 2 day period of very difficult reading, to be honest with you. Today we get to basically the end of the book, the version you have. There's a little bit more, but tomorrow I'm going to read that, and I'm also going to give you the additional part that's in my book that you don't have. So obviously, I'm going to have to read that whole thing. There's no questions from that section because, again, you don't have the text unless you have the book, and you have the right version of the book, to be honest, because one of them doesn't have it. But tomorrow, it's important that you pay attention and listen because of the fact that you do not have access to that text. Okay, so make sure that you do. Even if you're not really paying attention to these, and to be honest, if you're not paying attention to them, you're not getting this detail. So maybe some of you will kick that message on to your friends that it's important to look at tomorrow's because some of the material in tomorrow's is going to show up on the test. All right, I will tell you that. It will be more of overall stuff, not specific. So you need to know what happens. All right. So today we're going to get our last Tuesdays, the 12th, 13th, and 14th. They're relatively short, especially the 14th, so we can get them all in. We're also going to look a little bit closer at a couple of the italicized passages because they are very important for the sake of what we're doing right now in this part of the book. Okay, so the 12th Tuesday is about forgiveness. And it stems from Mitch asking Morrie about, as you're getting close to the end, is there anything that, you regret as far as you didn't forgive people or things like that? And the whole purpose of this particular part of the book is not about forgiving others. It's about forgiving yourself mainly. Now, Morrie does make a comment about the importance of forgiving others. He tells a story about a friend of his who he lost contact with because he felt like the guy wasn't there for him when he needed him, and then the guy died of cancer, and it really bothered him. But the point isn't in that story is not to tell you that it's important to forgive that person. It's the importance of telling you to forgive yourself when you've done things that are wrong, okay, when you make mistakes. But there's an even bigger thing. If it was just that, this wouldn't be important. But there's more to it. And this next part is going to be hard for you guys to maybe wrap your minds around. This is more of an older person issue. It's not really an issue for most teenagers. Now, there's a few of you that may, but for most of you, it's not. All right? Here's what he says. He says, it's not just other people we need to forgive, Mitch, he finally whispered. We also need to forgive ourselves. Ourselves? Yes, for all the things we didn't do. All the things we should have done. Not shouldn't, should have done. You can't get stuck on the regrets that you should have, of what should have happened. That doesn't help you when you get to where I am. He's talking a lot about regrets of things we didn't do. This is just, if you're a person who is at all in a career field, not I'm just trying to make money, so I'm just working at whatever I can find type situation. A career field like me as a teacher, or most of your parents probably are in a career field. And we're not talking about money here. We're talking about just a job that they've chosen to make their calling for the rest of their life. It's inevitable, especially if you're really a hard worker. It's inevitable you're going to come across a point where you feel like I should have done things differently. Guys, I am struggling with this mightily here at 42. By this time I wanted to definitely have my master's under my belt and be working on my doctorate. I wanted to be, have at least started on putting together some books. Guys, I haven't even started my master's yet. Half the teachers at the school have theirs, and no, not to be a jerk, people look down on me for not having it. I know that. I know that because when I talk with administration, or when I talk with another teacher, and they talk about well, you've got your master's, you should be able to do this, this, and this, and I point out I don't have my master's. The look I get tells you right away I dropped way below what they thought I was. And I'm a person who values education and loves it, but the thing is that it's expensive, and to take time to do that means I have to sacrifice it somewhere else. I have to either sacrifice it at home with my family, which I don't get much time with them now, or I have to sacrifice it at my job. And I don't feel comfortable doing either, so I haven't gotten it yet. It's hurt me in my career, and it's one of those things that it does bother me at times. And now I'm getting to the age where I start wondering if it's even worth doing now. So, and I feel bad about that because I had all these dreams of what I wanted to do when I started my career. And yes, 42 is not ancient, but it's getting closer to the backside of the career. And it's hard. It's easy to look at yourself and say, I'm such a lazy butt. Why didn't I do this? And there's a point where you have to forgive yourself and realize that you're doing exactly what God needs you to be doing right now. if you're following what you're supposed to. And I feel no question that Cottage Hill is where I'm supposed to be right now. And, you know, getting a master's does nothing but make people look at me differently. That's it. But it's still one of the things I've always wanted for myself. Plus, I love school. I enjoy classes. So it's hard sometimes to forgive yourself for the fact that you haven't done all the things that you thought you were going to. Most people never do, all right? But it's easy to look back, especially at the end, if you do have that kind of time where you know it's coming, and to think about all the things you didn't do and to feel bad about them. And Morrie says we can't. We have to move past that. He said, I'm mourning my dwindling time, but I cherish the chance that I have to make things right. And he's like, I can't spend all of my time wishing for things that I can't fix now. We have to move on. The last line in here is kind of foreshadowing. We're building to the climax of this. Now, remember, we talked about, all stories have this. It's just, it's not always an action-packed scene. And we know that we knew this was coming all along. We knew Morrie was going to die. All right. The last line in this chapter is all I was afraid of was saying goodbye. So we know he's going to have to do that. Now, the italicized passage here is kind of cool. He says, I've picked a place to be buried. Where is that? Well, it's not far from here, on a hill beneath a tree overlooking a pond. Very serene, a good place to think. Are you planning on thinking there? I'm planning on being dead there. He chuckles and I chuckle. Will you visit? Visit? Just come and talk. Make it a Tuesday. You always come on Tuesdays. We're Tuesday people. Right, Tuesday people. Come to talk then. He has grown so weak so fast. Look at me, he says. I'm looking. You'll come to my grave to tell me your problems. My problems? Yes. And you'll give me answers? I'll give you what I can, don't I always? I picture his grave on the hill overlooking the pond, some little 9-foot piece of earth where they will place him, cover him with dirt, put a stone on him. Maybe in a few weeks, maybe in a few days. I see myself sitting there alone, arms across my knees, staring into space. Hey, kitty. I say, not being able to hear you talk. I said it won't be the same, I say, not being able to hear you talk. Ah, talk. He closes his eyes and smiles. Tell you what, after I'm dead, you talk, and I'll listen. That when I read this, that was one of the first parts that really, I've had a couple little small tear parts when I read this the first time. That one was tough. That idea, and that's what's going to carry into the next chapter. The idea that death doesn't end a relationship, that there is still something there even after that person's gone. And this is hard for us to understand. It's so shocking to me that even as Christians, this is hard for us to understand, that the person's still there. They're just not there. All right, they're somewhere else, but they're still, this person is still out there. All right, at least that's how we believe. All right, so we get to the 13th Tuesday where we talk about the perfect day, and this one's a really neat section. All right, there's a little bit of joking at the beginning about Morrie planning his burial. He plans to be cremated. He starts talking about the way people approach death in a hospital, especially a dead body. And he says they treat it like it's contagious. He says, it's not contagious, Death's as natural as life. It's part of the deal we made. That's kind of an interesting thing. We all do look at death as this scary, scary, awful thing. And he's really pointing out something that's unique about it. We all do it. Death is a part of our lives. It's like by being alive, we know that one day we're going to die. And we shouldn't be so frightened of it, and we shouldn't be so frightened of other people that it has happened to. We shouldn't treat it like such a mysterious and evil thing, to be honest. So his eyes widened. He's talking about I'm skipping ahead to read this section. I kind of circled the sections I want to make sure I read to you because I want to focus on some stuff he did. But he's talking about having a bad coughing fit the night before. He says his eyes widened. It was the most incredible feeling, the sensation of accepting what was happening, being at peace. I was thinking about a dream I had last week where I was crossing a bridge into something unknown, being ready to move on to whatever is next. He talks about during this coughing fit, he started to get dizzy and feel like he was about to die, and he all of a sudden had this peace come across him. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can approach what that was, but he says he was ready at that point. That's let's hope we all are ready when that time comes, and not fighting it. He had said way back earlier in the book, and this is one of those ways to tie chapters together. He said he wanted to die peacefully. He didn't want to die in fear, and he realizes he's not going to. He says that's the idea we're all looking for, a certain peace with the idea of dying. If we know in the end that we can ultimately have that peace with dying, then we can finally do the really hard thing, which is what? Making peace with living. And wow, so much depth in that little section. He's like, once you can learn that you're okay with dying, you can now start making peace with being alive. Because he says that's harder. that's a harder thing, because death is a moment. Death is you build to it, it happens, it's over, and then, we're on to the next thing. Life is long if you're lucky. It's long and very, very arduous. It's filled with tough times. Maybe not as tough as what we're dealing with now for most of us. Hopefully, for a good bit of you, this will be as tough as it gets. But there will be other tough times. There will be different tough times. And we have to make peace with our deaths so we can make peace with those moments then and realize what we can do with them. A lot of it's just about perspective. You realize that times like this that we're going through right now are temporary. And yes, there's some difficulty that comes with them, and there will be some long-term difficulties that come off of this for our country and our world. But the fact is that there are things we can overcome and move on, because we all know that one day we're not going to be here anymore. So let's take this time now and not let these things destroy the moments we do have. And that's really what it comes down to. Are you going to let difficult times ruin the times you have? A lot of people right now are at home and are griping and complaining because they're at home, and they're losing the fact that, I'm not saying God put this virus on the planet. Okay, don't say that, but don't think that. But God is giving you an opportunity now to do something that most of us neglect severely, and that's spend time with your family. I sat back in the back the other day and played on the Switch with Maddox for an hour playing Animal Crossing. Now, guys, I'm a 42-year-old man, not really my speed, but I actually had a lot of fun. And I sat there and played with him in a way we haven't in a while, because that's something he loves. And normally I don't have time for that. I don't make time for that. I have time for it, but I don't make time for it. And I'm kind of in a position now where I have to. I got to go and visit a couple of the seniors yesterday to drop off stuff, and I sat and had about a 20-minute conversation with one of the girls and her grandparents, and something that, usually I only talk to parents when I have to send them an email about you not doing your work. It's so nice to have those opportunities, and these difficult times have provided those. So if we decide we're not going to let difficult times, destroy our moments that we have, and instead we're going to use those to build better moments, that's important. And the only way we do that is when we realize that our moments are temporary. And I mean, really realize it, not understand it up here. I mean, understand it in here. We all know we're going to die one day, but a lot of us we just choose not to think about it. And the fact is that by thinking about it, we don't mean thinking about, oh my gosh, I'm going to die, and making yourself paranoid, but thinking about, since I know one day this will be over, let me enjoy what I've got now. It may be 80 years, it may be 40 years, it may be 30 years, whatever it is, let's enjoy it while we've got it. And Morrie's kind of he's trying to give this message to Mitch. It doesn't help him as much now since he's, very close to the end, but, Mitch Albom's got a ton of time left, hopefully. And then he points out the line that I think is the line for this book. There's a couple of really important lines throughout, but this is the one where he says, death ends a life, not a relationship. And that's the key, is to remember. And a lot of you have already gone through this before, when you've lost someone close to you, a grandparent. Some of you have lost parents. I've been blessed not to lose anyone super close to me. As far as funerals I've been to, my father passed away when I was in college, but my dad left when I was 2. I have no relationship with my father. We didn't have a bad relationship. My mother never talked bad about him. I just knew nothing about him except a few pictures, and I had talked to him maybe 3 times on the phone in my entire life. So that one wasn't a big loss. I lost the 2 grandparents that I knew growing up, and we didn't have a close relationship either. For various reasons that are not for today's lesson, but we didn't have a good relationship. I lost them when I was I think I was in college when that happened. When I lost my grandmother. The only one that really kind of hurt was I lost my great-grandmother in 1996, the year I graduated from high school. And I had spent time with her when I was little. A lot of time when my mom would work weekends and I would stay with her. So when she died, it kind of hurt. But the thing was she was also 96. She was born in 1900. And we knew that was coming. I was prepared for it. I've not lost any friends to this. I've lost students, and that was definitely difficult to deal with for different reasons. 4 years I taught public school in Florida. Every year we lost one senior. Usually it was car accidents. One was very tragic. We had one girl who was killed by her boyfriend. They were driving down the interstate. They got in a fight. He opened the door and threw her out. Then we had 3 that were killed in car accidents, one right by the school. So those were all really tough. Let me back up. We had 2 car accidents. We had 1 suicide as well. That was my last year. And that one was a tough one. I will admit. When I usually talk about this, I don't think about those four because I do kind of block those. Those were not happy days. Um, but we had a girl who was part of a group of kids that I kind of had taken under my wing, who were kind of the outcasts. But hey, loved really cool music, and it just didn't have anyone in their lives, any parents, any adults. And that was kind of my time at that school, was for those 4 years, was for that group of kids. I really feel like that's why God put me there. And one of the girls actually, committed suicide, and it was such a tragic time, and a lot of people really struggled through that. So, those moments are the ones where you stop and think about how short life is, and how we should enjoy every moment we have of it, even the tough ones, because they also have something important to give. All right. Continuing on a little bit further, Morrie's sitting there talking about how he would have lived differently if he could, and he says, he says what he's different with now is, he says, I'm different in terms of trying to grapple with the big questions, the ultimate questions, the ones that won't go away. That's the thing, you see. Once you get your fingers on the important questions, you can't turn away from them. Which are the important questions? Well, as I see it, they have to do with love, responsibility, spirituality, and awareness. And if I were healthy today, those would still be my issues. They should have been all along. And he points out the things we should care about are about our responsibilities, the way we love others, our spirituality, and our awareness of what's going on around us. He says those are the important things. Those are the things that, to be honest with you, most of you don't care about or focus on. And he says you should, because now that he's running out of days, those are the things he knows are important. And he says once you realize that and put your finger on it, you don't lose it. I want to challenge you to do that. Start thinking about those four things. What are your responsibilities? I don't just mean your responsibilities like I have to mop the floor. I mean, as a human being and as a person gifted with the talents and abilities you have, what responsibilities do you have to use those things? I wrote to a student, and I won't say the student's name. I wrote to a student recently about, he had written me this very good paper about, about various things, to be honest with you. But one of them was about the important, what did he say? Oh, about one time he used to, now I don't know if the students changed or not, but he made the comment that for the longest time he was comfortable with making C's, but he knew that his parents wanted him to make A's and B's, so he knew he was going to have to start doing better. And I think the way he was hinting at it was that he kind of was starting to see the reasons for that. And I told him, I said, this would be against that responsibility. You've been blessed with the ability. This kid can make A's and B's without trying. He really can. He is that smart, but he chooses not to. And I told him, I said, that's not being responsible with the gifts that you've been given. There's a lot of kids who struggle to make C's, and you can do it without trying. So you might as well make A's and B's and put in a little effort, because the good Lord blessed you with a brain that has that ability. So that's what he's talking about when he talks about responsibilities. Of course, love is about how we treat other people. Spirituality, now, that one's odd for Morrie. Remember, Morrie's an atheist, but Morrie still believes in the concepts of spirituality. He knows how powerful it can be. And then finally, what was the fourth one was awareness. And that's just about being aware of what's going on around you and helping where you can. So then the heart of this chapter was, he's asked, what would you do if you had one perfect, healthy day? He says, 24 hours left. You can do anything you want. Tell me how you would spend it, which is such a powerful question, which, by the way, heads up, you're going to see that one again. This is Morrie's answer. Let's see. I'd get up in the morning, do my exercises, have a lovely breakfast of sweet rolls and tea, go for a swim, then have my friends come over for a nice lunch. I'd have them come one or two at a time so we could talk about their families, their issues, and talk about how much we mean to each other. Then I'd like to go for a walk in the garden with some trees, watch their colors, watch the birds, take in nature that I haven't seen in so long now. In the evening, we'd all go to a restaurant with some great pasta, maybe some duck. I love duck. And then we'd dance the rest of the night. I'd dance with all the wonderful dance partners out there until I was exhausted. And then I'd go home and have a deep, wonderful sleep. That's it? That's what Mitch asks him. That's it? I mean, that's such a boring, plain day. He says, that's it. It was so simple, so average. I was actually a little disappointed. I figured he'd fly to Italy or have lunch with the president or romp on the seashore or try every exotic thing he could think of. After all these months lying there, unable to move a leg or a foot, how could he find perfection in such an average day? Then I realized this was the whole point. And that one, man, that is another exceptionally powerful thing that if I asked you to read on your own, I think most of you would have glossed right over it. The point Morrie's trying to show him is that the things we need are what we have every day. The everyday stuff is where we truly find value. It's great to go on vacation. It's great to have 2 weeks in a different spot, but the fact is that that is an experience that's novel. It's not the everyday, and that's what's important. Is that we have the everyday stuff because those are the places where we find the important moments. And he's like, those are where we should find our value. Those are what we've been blessed with, and we ignore them and we just skip over them. And the only time we really will miss them is when we don't have them anymore. We shouldn't wait that long. So we should learn to be excited about those moments now and to take advantage of them while we can. As this chapter closes, they talk a little bit more about Mitch's brother, and he really encourages him again to reach out, and that he kind of gives him encouragement that he says, keep trying. It will work out. Sorry, my dog's in here scratching, and I'm trying to get her to stop. It is the most annoying thing. He says eventually it'll work out. He says he'll find his way back. You found your way to me. This will work out for you. Then we have another one of these italicized passages that if you're reading the PDF, it's not. But this one, man, I think a couple of years ago, this one for some reason just I had to just kind of take a stop because it hurt so much to read this one. So I heard a nice little story the other day, Morrie said. He closes his eyes for a moment, and I'll wait. Okay, the story's about a little wave bobbing along the ocean, having a grand old time. He's enjoying the wind and the fresh air until he notices the other waves in front of him crushing against the shore. My God, this is terrible, the wave says. Look what's going to happen to me. Then along comes another wave. It sees the first wave looking grim, and it says to him, why do you look so sad? The first wave says, you don't understand. We're all going to crash. All of us waves are going to be nothing. Isn't it terrible? The second wave says, no, you don't understand. You're not a wave. You're part of the ocean. I smile. Morrie closes his eyes again. Part of the ocean, he says. Part of the ocean. I watch him breathe in and out, in and out. Again, you have to get better at comprehension to pick up these things. This isn't hard, though. He's pointing out that we all fear this ending moment, the terminal moment where we die. But if we look at ourselves as bigger than that, we look at ourselves as a part of God's creation or part of humanity itself, we realize that even when we're not there, those things are going to go on, but our impact can last. And that's what we should be focused on, is our impact and our legacy. And then that gives us the last, now it's not the last chapter we're going to read today. The chapter, and I'm trying to hurry, guys. I realize I've been going long. The 14th Tuesday is the one where we say goodbye. This one's about looking at his writing style, how he closes. Okay, we're in a conclusion type section. Okay, he's very slow and deliberate as he gets to Morrie's house. He describes everything in great detail. The conversation with Morrie is basically non-existent. Morrie's about to die. The tender part in this, and this is again would be your climactic point in my opinion, is this. He's talking to me. He says, Coach, I don't know how to say goodbye. He patted my hand weakly, keeping it on his chest. This is how we say goodbye. And there's a lot of ellipses in there because he's struggling to talk. He breathed softly in and out. I could feel his rib cage rise and fall. Then he looked right at me. Love you, he rasped. I love you too, Coach. No, you do. Know something else. What else do you know? You always have. That is their final moments together as Morrie's basically saying goodbye to his friend, and Mitch is having to say goodbye to a mentor that he's cherished, and that he's realizing this is part of the forgiveness thing we've got in the first chapter. He's realizing I haven't taken advantage of this relationship and spent time with this man the way I should have, and now he's going to be gone. And it's a really difficult section the first time you read it. A lot of you may have read before you watch the video. That's what you're supposed to do anyway. And maybe a few of you, it kind of got to you. If it didn't, the next sections will. All right, so we're going to read Graduation, which is only about a page and a half. All right, I'm trying to keep it under 30 minutes. It says Morrie died on a Saturday morning. This is how I know it's not the climax. Climaxes have to be more than one sentence, okay? The climax is them saying goodbye. That's the highest point in the book. Now we kind of get the falling action there. And really, to be honest with you, this book is not much in the way of falling action. It kind of skips the falling action and hits straight to the resolution. Graduation, this section is a little bit of your falling action. So Morrie died on a Saturday morning. His immediate family was with him in the house. Rob made it from Tokyo. He got to kiss his father goodbye, and John was there, and of course Charlotte was there, and as was Charlotte's cousin Marcia, who had written the poem that so moved Morrie at his unofficial memorial service, the poem that likened him to a tender sequoia. They slept in shifts around his bed. Morrie had fallen into a coma 2 days after our final visit, and the doctor said he could go at any moment. Instead, he hung on through a tough afternoon and through a dark night. Finally, on the 4th of November, when those he loved had left the room for a moment to grab coffee in the kitchen, the first time none of them were with him since the coma began, Morrie stopped breathing, and he was gone. I believe he died this way on purpose. I believe he wanted no chilling moments, no one to witness his last breath. and be haunted by it, the way he had been haunted by his mother's death notice telegram or by his father's corpse in the city morgue. I believe he knew that he was in his own bed and that his books and his notes and his small hibiscus plant were nearby. He wanted to go serenely, and that is how he went. Notice that I told you when we started reading this, that hibiscus plant, and if you've been reading, you've noticed it showed up multiple times. That's planting these little breadcrumbs that are going to come back later. And here's where he says he knows that as Morrie passed away, he had his plant there with him. That was something he cared about. The funeral was held on a damp, windy morning. The grass was wet and the sky was the color of milk. We stood by the hole in the earth, close enough to see the pond water lapping against the edge and to see ducks shaking off their feathers. Although hundreds of people had wanted to attend, Charlotte kept this gathering small, just a few close friends and relatives. Rabbi Axelrad read a few poems. Morrie's brother David, who still walked with a limp from his childhood polio, lifted the shovel and tossed dirt in the grave, as per tradition. At one point, when Morrie's ashes were placed into the ground, I glanced around the cemetery. Morrie was right. It was indeed a lovely spot, trees and grass and a sloping hill. You talk, I'll listen, he had said. I tried doing that in my head, and to my happiness found that the imagined conversation felt almost natural. I looked down at my hands, saw my watch, and realized why. It was Tuesday. So that's kind of the ending of the book. A lot of people will stop reading there. They won't read the conclusion, which you guys have. And for my book, there's a conclusion, but there's also an afterword for the 20th anniversary where they actually talk about the impact Morrie had long term. Really powerful ending. Look, that's how you do a conclusion. Look at how he points out that the funeral happened on a Tuesday, and that just makes this even more fitting. And you get this scene of closure, but it's such a sad scene, such a sad final point. But we knew it was coming all along, and it's what makes the book have the power it does. I'm not much for sad movies and sad books, but I'll tell you what, every one of them I've ever sat down and read or watched has had a big impact, just because they force you to look at things differently, and that's what this book is supposed to do. So try not to get a little bit teary-eyed there at the end, but it kind of fought me when I got to that Tuesday part. I'm proud of myself for holding it together. I'm not so sure tomorrow is going to be as easy, though, okay? The conclusion part and then the part that's in my book, the afterword, are both very, very powerful. I mean, they're two of the most powerful parts of the book. So we're going to read them tomorrow. We're not going to just talk about them. We're actually going to read them. And we're going to close out this book, and we're going to move on to the next week. We're going to take a test on this. We're going to do a paper. It's a very simple paper. It's a personal essay. It's one most of you will enjoy writing and not have any struggle with. And then we're going to move into our final unit of our 10th grade year. And then hopefully I'll be able to have you guys back with me live and in person in August. So, I miss you guys a ton. Getting to see those 5 seniors, and I only got to see 2 of the seniors. The other 3 weren't answering their doors. But I got to see 2 of them yesterday, and that made me really miss my students a bunch. So I want you guys to know I'm thinking about you. I want you to know that I love you. I want you to know that I hope that, one day I can have this type of relationship with you guys where, we'll have this ability to, converse about more than just the class, and that we'll be able to build that. I have the blessing of most of you all have for 3 years, so I really want to invest in this group of kids. So you guys enjoy your Thursday, and, do something nice for your parents today. Let them know you care, all right? Take care, guys. I'll see you tomorrow for Let's Hope Mr. Morse Doesn't Cry chapters.